So now that I have the aorta about at the level it should be for its full extent, down to L5. Mouse is stuck a little bit. What I want to do is give you an idea of how you might close it and create the bifurcation for the common iliacs. Now here, got a dilemma we've had in a couple other classes or a couple other things. I'm going to turn off the grid right now, just try to make this a little simpler for you to see. So there's my my edge. Turn off the soft select by hitting the letter B. So that gold or copper color edge now is all selected, and I'm going to do what we did before, fill the hole. Now remember we talked about earlier using a limited number. We held the polygon count for the extrusion to 480, and the reason I did that was to give me this kind of limited number of faces so I could pull vessels out. It's also going to help me down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is first, now that I've filled the hole, I'll use the multi-cut tool and I'll connect to make four-sided faces. So I hit return there. Click on the dots, return. So now I have this, four-sided face, four-sided face, and four-sided face. So I'll take this face in the middle and I'll scale it a little bit closer, and I'll scale it a little bit smaller so it gets a little more so it starts to get to the shape a little more I want. Let's see what that looks like. So it's not too bad. Go back to number 1. I'll grab this face and I'll say edit mesh extrude, and I'll pull that face down and maybe out a little bit. Now I could try to you know what, I'm going to undo that for a second. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually angle it up. Alright, hold on a second, let me get back. Alright, so I haven't done any extrusion. I click it, extrude, and first thing I'm going to do is rotate it a little bit so that I want to make sure that that face, let's just rotate it before I extrude it. So we get a little more, kind of that natural position of the vessels coming off that artery, off the aorta. That might be a little more natural. Again, it's a little asymmetric. I'm not really worried about that too much. So now, I don't know why that edge there didn't quite do what I wanted it to do, so I'm going to rotate it a little bit. And again, maybe shrink that face in the middle. And now let's try again. Grab that face, say edit mesh extrude. Just grab the move tool and pull it straight down. And you notice when I do an extrusion, I get this options box up here, and one thing it says is divisions. So I'm actually going to just middle mouse on top of the number here and tell it to give me 4 divisions. So I find that easier than trying to extrude a little bit at a time, because I don't really, without a path or some kind of guide, I really don't know where I want to pull that. So what I'll do is I'll just pull it out straight and add some divisions to again kind of mirror what's going on. This looks a little stretched here, so I might just also insert an edge loop right there. Let's see what it looks like when it's not too bad, Probably what I'm going to have to do is get these edges to soften it, or at least get a little more close together. At least I want to taper. I want this change to get smaller. Remember, we talked about logically a vessel, an artery. It's giving off branches. It's gonna lose mass. It can't stay the same size after it's given off branches. So we can kind of use this technique to go up and down the artery a little bit. We can play with that a little more as we get into the other branches of it. So one thing that has to happen is this and this. In other words, the left and right common iliac have to total, their diameter has to total equal the abdominal aorta here. So they can't, if this is a bifurcation, then this one plus this one has to equal that one, and I think we're pretty close to that. So we've got what we want. What we could do to, again, kind of make this a little more realistic. Let's see what, that's kind of odd. Maybe we can grab this edge and shrink it a little bit so you get a little more square by the time we get to the end. We do the same thing. Now when I'm doing this, since I only have one edge, I'm actually using the edit in all directions. Okay. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think if it is, it may get a little too mechanical. So sometimes you want to experiment a little bit with. Okay, and again, let's look at number 3. And we got a pretty good deal there. All right, so that's how we can make the bifurcation. Let's say the last thing we want to do is we want to just review that step we did to create some type of end. Now, one of the things I mentioned to you about these edges too, I can grab them and rotate them a little bit, and create a bit more diversity, again, in terms of how this thing appears to move. So then maybe it comes up over that mass, maybe this goes down a little bit. Again, we kind of get a little more, get rid of some of that pipe-like feel. Okay, maybe move back a little bit. So that starts to get a little more natural. Okay, let's just close these ends. This should be a review by now. It should be a review, really. So I'm going to get rid of the B. So I don't have any soft select. I'm going to insert an edge loop pretty close to the end there so that it forces the roundness to stay. Give me an edge. Then I'm going to grab that center face. And I say edit mesh extrude. Click on any one of these scales, then drag the center one to create the thickness of the vessel. Hit G, which means extrude again, or repeat the same operation. In this case, it's an extrusion, and get that, and just drive that into the vessel. Now, if you find that it's still a little too thin with this, it's not keeping the thickness. It's probably because we really don't have any information on the inside. On the outside, we put this edge, and it created an edge there so that this side rolls over with a relative sharp end. But on the inside, you see there's no edge like that, so it rolls over quite dramatically. In other words, the distance between the edges is big enough that it makes quite a change. So what we could do is insert another edge loop in here. And now when we say 3, see we get that thickness to just the wall of the vessel there. Okay, and you can obviously push. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll grab that face and I'll not only push it in even further, I'll actually gotta be careful because it's not going to follow the path perfectly. You gotta be careful you don't. I'll actually shrink it as well. That's really what I'm trying to do, is just hide it more than anything. Now let's come back to this side. Let's do this a different way. So I'm going to get that edge I put on there. I'm going to delete it, just to kind of make a point here. All right, so we ran into a problem over, oops, I got a little face over here sticking up. We ran into a problem where you know, our thickness was only on the outside initially. We had to make a second edge. One way to avoid that is we could, I was thinking we could cut through, but there's still no inside right now. So I don't know another way to do that other than to do a second insert edge. So let's repeat the process there. If I take this face, say edit mesh, extrude, I shrink it. Can't get where I want to be here. I shrink it. And now I say G for extrude again, and I push it into the vessel. Okay, let's see, did I come out anywhere? All right, so now I don't have an edge, quite honestly, on either outside or inside, right? And when I smooth this, you're going to see I don't hold that thickness. I get a very quick or dramatic division of that face because it's such a large face, and it doesn't have this thickness like this does, right? But because I have that like that, what I was wondering is, could I get it in a position where I could take the multi-cut tool and drag across, and in that way make, see what I've done is the multi-cut tool is cut through all those faces. The problem is, you can see where, you know, the edge it's not close enough to the lip. I could grab this one and move it up a little bit. So I'm not sure this second technique, using that multi-cut tool, is any easier, honestly, than just doing what we did before, where we did them each separately. So there's the outside edge now, and let's see what the inside edge might do. Again, if we hit 3. So now we've kept the lip. So, you know, really 6 of one, half of the other. But now we've got, you know, a common iliacs at the end of our vessel. And you can see, like I said, I've kind of purposely averaged things a little bit, changed things a little bit. This area here is denser because I think when I extended the line, it didn't spread them quite as much. So I could take a couple edges out of there. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. But just to make more uniform, you always want these faces to be as close as possible. So maybe here I'll actually add one. This has gotten a little elongated. Okay. Maybe what I'll do right here is just move that down a little bit. And I could also see vertex, let's say, drag a box on them, on that whole collection that's kind of uneven now, and go under B to hit the letter B to soft select to increase that, and then go back under Edit Mesh and say Average Vertices. And what that will do is mathematically space those edges out so they're now more uniform. That should give me a better UV map for painting. Again, at this point I can continue to edit with this curve because I think it's still in effect. There's a point where when you edit too many times, not really too many times, but when you edit with edit things too extremely, after a while the polygon will no longer hold the history. I don't think we're at that point here yet. But it may be at this point it's easier to just take the edge and again maybe make a little softer or broaden that soft selection a little bit and move things that way. And by virtue of not being quite so perfect, we're making a little more of a natural vessel. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, that's too far out right there. Okay. Now we've got other vessels to put on, other branches, and we might want to begin with those. But now at least we've got the full extent of the aorta. So I'm going to save this and stop tape. Go to the next lesson.